For about 5 seconds on that sign so people know which tape this is. And 3, 2, 1, you can put it down now and just maybe say your name and start your story.
Okay, well, my name is Hester, and I was born in Amsterdam, in Holland. And with my parents, I had a brother who was 3 years older than me. And we lived for about 3 years. I was 3 years old, and my brother had asthma. And the doctor had said to my parents, the city air is not good for you. He was always sick. We have to move to the coast. So we moved to Zandvoort. Can I wait 1 minute?
Sure. Oh, hold on. You're hooked up. You're hooked up, ma'am. Don't walk too far.
Oh, I just want...
And we're going.
Okay, so we moved from Amsterdam, what is over here. We moved to a small town right over here in Zandvoort. And at those years, it was a big trip. Right now, it may be by car, is maybe 3/4 of an hour. And this is the map of Holland that I have outlined here. Germany is over here, Belgium is over here, and England. This is the North Sea, and England is over there. So we had to move to Zandvoort. And my father had to leave his job, and because there was not that much transportation, and we didn't have cars at those years. So I don't exactly know what he really did, because Zandvoort is really a beach town. There was really, in the wintertime, there was not much work or so. But I think he worked something with the school department, and then he did odd and ends jobs. So anyway, so we lived there till about 1940. That is when Hitler invaded Holland. Matter of fact, that was May 10th. It was right after my birthday. My birthday is in the beginning of May. And so Hitler invaded Holland, and well, Holland is really a small country. And we didn't, in World War I, Holland was always neutral and stayed out of the war. But this time Hitler invaded Holland, and Holland really fought for about 5 days. They didn't have any bombs or anything like that, but they opened up the dikes in Holland, because Holland is below sea level. And they opened up the dikes and flooded all the polder land. They figured, oh, those soldiers could never get into Holland with all that water. And so they were fighting for more than 4 days. And the 5th day, what Hitler did is they bombed Rotterdam. Now, Rotterdam is right here. This is Rotterdam here. Rotterdam is a big harbor. Comes from all over the world. Boats come in. Well, he bombed Rotterdam and almost flattened 3/4 of Rotterdam. Well, by that time, the Queen and her cabinet said they had to surrender. I mean, they couldn't find the Germans, and so they surrendered after 5 days. The Queen and her family, they fled to England. And from England, they went to Canada, and there's where they stayed. But meanwhile, we are stuck with the Germans, with the soldiers. So, but nothing really changed very much. Now, we lived right on the beach. You have the dunes, and then you have the beach, beautiful, beautiful beach. Well, the first thing what they did is the soldiers closed off all the beaches, so we couldn't go to the beach anymore. and they put in mines in the water because they figured that if from England, if the ships come to help Holland, they would hit the mine and they were blown up. But I have seen. So, and then in the dunes, they made bunkers from cement. And there's where the soldiers were sitting with the cannons in case a ship did come by. So anyway, so that's about all the changes in the beginning. I still could go to school. Now, I was 13 years old. And this is a picture of me when I was 13 years old. It's not a very good picture. Anyway, the only thing is, they invaded May 10th, the Germans invaded Holland. A couple of months later, somebody blew up the synagogue. And we always thought it was the Germans that blew up the synagogue, but it was not the Germans that did it. It was the Dutch fascists, the Dutch who collaborated with the Germans. And now they figured, oh, Hitler is in charge and we can do anything for the Jews, you know. So they blew up the synagogue. So it took me quite a few years before I know that we had to leave Zandvoort. And all the Jewish people had to leave Zandvoort and move to Amsterdam. So, but you know, I was only a kid, I was 13 years old, and it didn't really, I was a kid and it didn't really thought in my mind of to remember all these things. So I only know we had to move to Amsterdam. And we only could take our clothes with us. We couldn't take anything with us because we didn't know how long we had to live in Amsterdam. And we had a little backyard. And one day I saw my mother hide something. She opened up some of they were like flagstones in the back, and she hid something there. But I didn't really pay too much attention to it. So we had to move to Amsterdam. So my father had 10 brothers and 1 sister. And almost all of them lived in Amsterdam. Only 1 brother lived in Antwerp, Belgium. So, and the 1 sister, she had room to put us up. She had an apartment. Her husband was a German Jew. But by the time we came to Amsterdam, he wasn't there anymore. He had to go to a work camp. At those years, we only knew work camps. We didn't know about concentration camps. And she had a baby. She just had a baby, maybe about a half-a-year-old, who was retarded. She was a Mongoloid child and never cried or anything. So we moved in with my aunt. And so, meanwhile, I couldn't go to school there, and my brother, who was 3 years older, couldn't. But I found a job right away in Amsterdam, and I worked for, well, it was a factory that was sewing, and I was learning how to sew. But it was run by the Germans. Anyway, so I learned how to sew. What my parents didn't work there, and my brother didn't work, and I have no idea of where we even got the money to get food or anything. But what you had to do is when we moved there, we had to go to, it's like a Jewish federation, and you had to give up your name and your address where you were living so they will know you know, you had to go and tell them that, not thinking that later on the Germans had all those names because the Jewish Federation had everybody's name and where they lived. So anyway, so we lived in Amsterdam, and see, I have to just go back a little bit. I don't know how many years ago I went back to Holland because I never could remember exactly of when we had to leave the town of Zandvoort. I thought always that the Germans invaded Holland and they came into Zandvoort and all the Jews had to leave right away. But that was not true. I had gone to years ago when my husband and I went back to Holland, I went to the town where I used to live. And I went to the town hall. And because it was always bothering me that I could not remember exactly when we had to get out of the town. So I went to the town hall and I saw this man sitting behind the desk. I figured maybe there are some newspapers that would say when all the Jews had to leave. So I told him what I was looking for. So he says to me, well, what is your name? What is your father's name? So I told him. So he goes in the back. He goes in the back and he comes out with this piece of paper. And on this paper, it is exactly of where I used to live and when we had to leave. And we didn't have to leave till May of 1942. So that meant that I still had lived in Zandvoort for 2 years. And I just could not remember that. So I still went to school, and now we had to move. Now we are in Amsterdam. And so this is 1942. That is when the Germans really started getting the Jews out of Holland. And first of all, we had to wear a Jewish star. And that was like a yellow star. And they must have given us about maybe 3 of them. And we had to sew that on our jackets. You go out and you needed about 3 because sometimes you change your clothes. So, and we could not pin it. It had to be sewn because if you pin it, then you could easily take it off. So anyway, well, we were good citizens and we did what we were told. So anyway, so then they started picking people up on the streets. Anybody that wore a yellow star, and first in the beginning, they were only men and boys that they picked up. They had like a van or something bigger than, it was not really a truck, but it was bigger than a van. And every once in a while, they used to walk around in the street and pick up the people that had a yellow star, put them in the van, and ship them to a opera house, but was not all that far from where we lived with my aunt. It was an opera house, mostly Jewish artists, entertainment was there. And they used that as a gathering, putting everybody there. And from there, they shipped them to Westerbork, what is a camp in Holland. I have the map here again. This is Westerbork. So from Amsterdam, they went by train and they shipped them to Westerbork. Sometimes they sent them from Amsterdam. Over here is another camp that is Vught. And that was a camp, not a concentration camp, but that's where they put the people before they shipped them from the camp to Germany to the work camps. Now, we always thought they were work camps because we didn't find out till after the war that they were concentration camps. So anyway, so it was pretty scary just walking in Amsterdam. And what they did then, they put this says Jews are not allowed. We couldn't go to any movie theaters. We couldn't go on any public transportation, and we couldn't go into any stores unless it was a Jewish person that owned the store. But otherwise, so they put these things in the window. So it got very, very dangerous just to walk around. And then we had a curfew. After 8 o'clock, you couldn't be out on the streets anymore. And then every once in a while, you saw a person running. Now, you didn't know why they were running. Maybe they were running to get the bus or whatever. But because it was so scary walking around and they were picking people up, that all of a sudden everybody started to run. So, because you just wanted to get away. So that went on for a while. And then by July, they started to send people notifications in the mail. A letter in the mail that you had to come to the opera house. That was the Schouwburg. And you had to go there, and then you were sent to a work camp. So one day I came home from work, and everybody was very upset. What happened? My parents and my brother got the notification in the mail that they had to come to the opera house. I didn't get it, probably because I was working and it was the Germans who were running that factory. So, but I wanted to go with them. I didn't want to be left behind. But of course my parents says, no way, you stay back. So my mother made backpacks. Now I only think that we had those backpacks already when we left Zandvoort, because I cannot remember that we had any suitcases. So, but I know those backpacks were big like this and round. She made it from some kind of a material. And so they put all their clothes in there, and they had to be at the opera house a certain time. I don't remember exactly when, but that was in June. We moved in May in 1942 to Amsterdam. And I think it maybe was even towards the end of May that they had to go. So we lived on the 4th floor. And so they had to go downstairs with the big backpacks that they could hardly carry. And how were they going to carry it to go all the way to the opera house? But it's really not all that far, but when you have to carry those big backpacks. So just then, as we went downstairs, a man with a bicycle, and he had a little cart in back of his bike. And so he says they could put their backpacks in there, and he would take them to the opera house. And so that is what they did. And of course, it was very difficult for us to say goodbye downstairs because they had to leave me behind. So, of course, there was a lot of crying, but we did it fast, and they left. And I watched them going down the street, And of course, that is the last time that I ever saw them. So anyway, meanwhile, I stayed back with my aunt, and I went to work, and but I had a girlfriend that had lived also in the town where I used to live. And she, of course, had to move to Amsterdam too. And I saw her all the time. And one day she says to me, you know, one of these days they will send you, you'll get the letter too, and you will have to go to the camp also. She says, I can get you into hiding. Now, she is also, of course, she was Jewish, but her father came from Russia and her mother came from Turkey. Well, Germany was not at war with Russia yet, so they got an exempt that they didn't have to go to the camps. So when she says to me she can get me into hiding, I figured, well, I'll do that. So I never knew that she worked for the resistance. Now, she was all of 15, because by that time I'm 15 years old. And she was pretty smart that she was doing. Nobody knew that she was working for the resistance. So she got me a false passport. Now, my name, I had my original passport, and the passport looked something like this. See, when you open it up, this is a passport from my husband's cousin, because I don't know what happened to mine. And on the passport is a J. So when the Germans or the soldiers or the police used to stop you on the street, and let's say you didn't wear a yellow star, they asked for your identification. Well, the minute you gave them this, they knew that you were Jewish, and if you didn't wear the star, the yellow star, all right, by the way, in the wagon. So anyway, from my passport, they took off the J, and they, instead of my name was Hester, they made it Helene. And my last name was Waas, W-A-A-S. They put in back of that Dorp, D-O-R-P. So now my name is Helene Waasdorp. So I couldn't take anything with me, and she told me I have to get on the train and go to the city of Haarlem. I need this, so I had to go to the city of Haarlem. Now, this is Amsterdam. Haarlem is right here. That is on the way towards Zandvoort, where I used to live. So I took off the yellow star. So now I am traveling as a Christian. Anyway, I had to go on the train, and I had to go to Haarlem. I was a little nervous that I shouldn't meet anybody that knew me, because I'm already going towards the town where I used to live. And sure enough, I'm on the train, and all of a sudden somebody says, Hester. Well, you know, when you have for 15 years a name, and all of a sudden your name is not Hester anymore, I looked up, I got so scared, I hopped off the train. And anyway, I took the next train and I went to Haarlem. And I had to go to this church. I had to meet the man at the church. Well, as it is, he was the church organist there, who worked also for the resistance. Anyway, so I had to go and see him. Now, the only thing is, before I did that, before I met him, I do remember that I slept in 2 other places, but I don't remember all that much about it. I remember that I had to see him, and he looked me over. Well, at those years, I had pretty light brown hair, so I looked pretty good to him. I guess I didn't look Jewish. I don't know what the people used to say, oh, you look Jewish. Well, I don't know. I didn't. I had brown hair and I had like greenish eyes. I was not dark. Anyway, so now he asked me to say 88 in Dutch. Now, the people who lived in Amsterdam, and there were, I would say, 3/4 of the people in Amsterdam were all Jewish. And they had a certain dialect. You know, like the people in the South, they have a certain dialect. Well, I guess in Holland, maybe it was a Jewish accent. I have no idea. But I guess I sounded pretty good because I really didn't live all that long in Amsterdam. I mean, we moved there in May, and I think when I saw the men, it was probably towards the end of the year, or maybe like in January of the following year. So I guess I sounded pretty good to him. So, fine, he takes me home with him. He had his wife and he had 3 children, a little infant and a 2 and a 3-year-old, so they were real little. And I was going to live in their house. Now, before I came, they have had people staying over maybe for 1 or 2 nights before they were going to send to a different hiding place. I was the last one who stayed, and I stayed there. And I was like a maid there. I helped with the laundry and taking care of the kids and the cooking. I had a room up in the attic. And like you kids have known that like the Anne Frank story. So I had a room up in the attic. Anyway, so the first thing, now I just want to tell you, I think I was spoiled. I was very spoiled when I lived at home. Every time my mother needed any help, somehow I always disappeared. My brother is the one who used to help her all the time. So I really didn't do anything. I can't even remember ever making my bed or anything. But now I moved in there, he brings me home, and there is waiting for me a big tub, a big sink tub with water with dirty diapers. And I had to wash those diapers. And they never flushed the diapers in the toilet. So it was very dramatic for me to have to do that. But anyway, I did it. And I did not eat with the family in the dining room. I ate in the kitchen. So I was really a nanny and whatever you want to call it, a house cleaner, whatever you do call it. And so it was very difficult. By that time, I mean, I'm like not even 16 years old, 15 and a half years old. And at those years, the kids nowadays are much more, I think, mature already. We were really still kids. So, but I had a room and I cried a lot and because I was really lonesome. And I had this little note paper that is like my diary. Like I wrote in here how unhappy I was. That is all I had. Anyway, so it was just scary even every time the bell rang. I figured, somebody told them that they're hiding a Jewish girl, because I had the whole run of the house, but I never went outside. I don't remember years later when I went back to Holland how beautiful it was there, but of course I didn't know that I was in the house all the time. Anyway, so I was scared every time the doorbell rang, if maybe the neighbors said something. But see, in Holland, a lot of families had a young girl living in their house as a nanny or a maid or whatever. So, and the neighbors never really said anything. And once in a while, I think right where they lived is a little plaza with a bunch of little stores. And there was a butcher who used to get once in a while bones and used to cook the bones in water and used to give it to the neighbors, because the food, we didn't have all that much food already, because a lot of the food went to Germany, so they had rations. You know, they had, I think, little stamps that they could get, maybe a quarter of a pound of butter or something like that. But of course, they never got anything for me, so they had to share their food with me also. So the food was pretty scarce. We ate tulip bulbs that you have to take something out, because otherwise it is poisonous. And then you could eat that. And we did have sugar beets. Well, there was no sugar, but if you cook the sugar beets, you get like a sickly, syrupy, sweet stuff that you could put over the cereal. So anyway, we also heard the airplanes going over from England, coming over to Germany. Matter of fact, because Holland is so small that we could even hear the bombs that was falling in Germany. We could even hear that. But the planes were so high, they were either the Canadians or the English, they got so high, but the Germans had those searchlights. And once an airplane got into one of the searchlights, that was the end of the plane. So but we could hear them going over, and they were pretty high. So that lasted till 1945. So I lived with the people for about 2.5 years, 2 years, something like that. So anyway, so after the war was over, now they didn't pick up garbage anymore. In front of the house, there was a whole row of houses. Then you had like a medium strip with grass, and then there were houses on the other side. Well, they didn't pick up the garbage anymore, so people threw the garbage on that medium strip there, and it got pretty high. Well, when the war is over, all of a sudden I'm looking out, and they were picking up girls that had gone out with the soldiers, with the German soldiers. They collaborated with them. If they knew of anything, they would tell them, hey, there is maybe a Jew hiding in here or there. Well, they picked up all those girls and they put them on the top of the big pile. And they shaved their heads, and then they painted it, and then they sent them. So I thought this is, you know, there's a lot of things that I can't remember, but certain things you remember that. So anyway, there must have been a lot in the city in Haarlem, because I lived on the outskirts of Haarlem. They had a lot of celebration. Of course, I didn't go there because I didn't see anything. I didn't leave them. So one day I wanted to go to Amsterdam to see maybe that my parents came back from the war. You want to wait 1 second?
No, go ahead, sir. If you
Okay,
can
go.
You can keep talking.
Okay. They had a bicycle with rubber tires, not with air in them. They were just solid. And I went to Amsterdam on the bike, what is quite a ride on the bicycle. And I went to Amsterdam to see if any of my family had come back. and I found this girl that I knew. She was a girlfriend of mine, and she was Jewish, but she was half, her mother was not Jewish, her father was, so she never had to go away. So I bumped into her, and she says to me, I met one of your father's brothers. That is the one who lived in Belgium. He came after the war looking if he could find anything, any family. And what happened to him, my uncle and his wife with the 2 daughters, they had fled Antwerp, Belgium, when Hitler invaded Belgium. And they fled to southern France, to Spain, and from Spain they went to the Netherlands, Dutch Indies. Well, after the war, they wanted to go back to Antwerp. Well, also my mother's father lived in Antwerp also with his second wife. And they also fled to the Netherlands, West Indies. The only thing is, he went to America. My uncle went back to Antwerp, Belgium. So he's looking, so somehow I don't know how I got his address or whatever, but we got together. And he told me that my grandfather lives in America. So somehow I got in touch with my grandfather, but I have to go back a little bit. When I went back, after I saw in Amsterdam, I went back, of course, to the suburb of Holland where I had been in hiding. And I wanted to go, I wanted to go to America to my grandfather. Well, there is a Jewish organization, something like the Jewish Federation, that was in Amsterdam too. And they were they became my guardians because I had no parents. So anyway, one of my father's brothers, also in Amsterdam, had been in hiding, and he and his wife survived and moved back to Amsterdam. So I got in touch with my grandfather and also my mother's brother who lived with my grandfather. They all moved to America. They wanted me to come to America. And I was so unhappy anyway, I wanted to get away. So, but the man where I was hiding in his house, he wouldn't let me go. He wouldn't sign the papers or anything like that. And I really wanted to go. So one day I went over his desk, I guess, and I took the papers. Well, he was not home, I guess. I took the papers and I left. And I never went back. Now, I tell the kids in schools, maybe I was not such a nice girl who did this, but I did what I had to do. And so I left. And I moved in with my aunt and uncle in Amsterdam. And they had also a daughter. My cousin is a little bit younger than me, who was picked up and went to Theresienstadt. Well, she survived Theresienstadt, what is a concentration camp. So I lived with them and got all the papers ready and everything to go to America. So my daughter, who lives here in Seattle, once heard me talking in a school, told them that I didn't think I was such a nice girl to have done that. And she says, Ma, don't ever say that. I mean, you did what you had to do. And I mean, it was not like I had somebody that could tell me, well, you're doing right or you're doing wrong. I did it. Whatever I did. So I never kept in touch with the people again till many years later when my son, who wrote this book here, somehow through the email and the internet found the people who lived in the house where I was in hiding. It's not the same people. Anyway, he got very friendly, and they know of the girl, the oldest girl that I was taking care of. Of course, when I left, she was only 6 years old. But somehow he got in touch with her, and she wanted to know what kind of a child she was and everything. So anyway, so I came to America, and the only thing is what I want to say is also my girlfriend who helped me go into hiding, she had told my aunt that if they ever come for you, see what they did is, by the time it is 1942 in July, at night they came and they blocked off each part of the street because they had a list of where everybody was living, and they took everybody out at night. They just banged open the door. They went through your whole apartment. Because I had lived with my aunt on the 4th floor, they went to the 1st floor, the 2nd floor, and they took everybody out. So my girlfriend had told my aunt, if they ever come for you at night, and if you have time, put the baby up in the attic. The baby never cried, and I think there was a double wall there. And sure enough, one night, they came for all the people in that house, and she had time to put the baby up there. The next day, my girlfriend found out that that they had taken everybody in that street. So the next day, she went up in the house, in the attic, and there's the baby. So that baby is now some 60-odd years old. She put her at a farm in the southern part of Holland, and there's where she was hiding. And they really loved the baby. They didn't even know she was retarded. But after the war, 2 of my uncles survived, and they said that baby has to have a Jewish upbringing or something. They should have left her with the people at the farm. But anyway, she lives in a home now for retarded people. Anyway, so I came. So now I have a couple of things that I told you we couldn't take anything with us. Somehow I have this poetry album that I have no idea how it is in my possession. It is that I got this in 1939, and I think I got this maybe for Hanukkah, because I started writing in here in January in 1939, so I was 12 years old. And this is a booklet about all your friends write a little poem in here about like roses are red, I love you, something like that. Well, my father wrote in here, and somehow he wrote a poem that he wrote himself, that after many years I should look in this book and always think of what your parents have done for you to go through life. Of course, they you know, they never did it. And then I have here that my mother wrote a poem, because I think my father helped her write this. And then I have here one page that my brother wrote in here. So to me, how it came in my possession, I have no idea, but I got it. And then I also have, I got a report card here that I went to Hebrew school, a religious school. My father signed this in 1940, so I still went to religious school. Now in Zandvoort, where I used to live, there really was not a religious school. We had a synagogue. But in the public school where I went, one of the rooms after school, the rabbi came and taught us Hebrew. Why I have this, I have no idea. Why would anybody save a report card? So those are two things that I have no idea of how I got it. I mean, I have no idea who would have saved this for me, but I do have it. So after quite some years ago, I got married. I came to New York, and I met my husband in Boston, and we went to Holland, and I found this book. It is all about the town where I used to live, and in the back are all the dates of all the people, all the Jewish people that used to live there, and where they got killed. And in here, because see, I never knew, I didn't have any death certificates or anything from my parents. See, I lived in Holland before I came to America, 2 years in Holland. I came to America in 1947, and the war was over in 1945. And I was always hoping that, well, maybe someday my parents will still be coming back, that they survived the camps, because see, after the war is when we found out that they were work camps. So,
You mean concentration?
Concentration camps, right. So, well, in here are my parents' name. My mother, they left. We moved to Amsterdam in May of 1942. They got killed already in September of 1942. My father and my brother, my father got killed already in August, and my brother the same day as my mother. So I think when they arrived in the camp, because that is from May till August, is only a few months, so they got killed right away. So this book is was really, because now I know the dates exactly. They got killed in Auschwitz. I have exactly the date here. And also I have here, see, somebody wrote this book who used to live in that town where I used to live. And he got all that information from the Red Cross. Because, see, the Germans kept very good records. That is how they all have all the dates and everything. And in here it says, a letter that my father's name is on here, that because he was Jewish, he could not work for the school board or whatever he did. So that he was dismissed of that. So this was, so this book gave a lot of light to me. So then later on, I got my parents and my brother's death certificates, because they never came back. So we had a very, very big family. My mother had 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and a brother. and they each had like 2 and 3 children. So they got killed. The only thing, the brother who lived in Antwerp, Belgium, survived, of course. So I have a cousin, they have one daughter, so I have one cousin there. And then 3 brothers of the 10 brothers and the sister survived. So I still have 2 cousins who live in Antwerp. I have one cousin lives in Spain, and I have 2 cousins that live in Amsterdam. So I guess I'm lucky to have some family, because most people didn't have anybody left. And so I keep in touch with my cousins. Now, did I forget? Oh, yes.
You did. You forgot about
Yes, okay. About the girlfriend that I met?
the girlfriend that you met, and also about the candelabra and the...
Oh, yes. I told you before that I had seen my mother bury something. So after the war, I went back to Zandvoort, and I went to the house where we used to live. And they let me in, and I went to the backyard, and I dug up, because I remember that I saw my mother digging something up. And there was a menorah, a candelabra, a copper candelabra, and a silver tea set. So when I went back to Amsterdam, where I lived with my aunt and uncle before I came to America, I put it there. Well, when I moved to America, I guess I was kind of shy, maybe, I don't know, and I never took it with me. I maybe felt it should stay there. Now I can kick myself that I never took it with me, because that's the only thing that I would have had. The only thing is what I had from my parents. I'm wearing this necklace, and on that necklace is a little charm, and there's a little Dutch girl on it. And I got that from my parents when I think I was either 12 or 13 years old. And because I have it, because that was hanging on my neck. So that's the only thing that I have from my parents. Well, anyway, one time, so I never, all those years, I never met anybody that knew me as a child. So, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5 years ago, my husband and I went back to Holland. And because I want to show him where I used to live and everything. So we went with this friend of my son who got in touch with the internet, and we knocked on the door, and this old man opened the door, but his wife had just died, so we really didn't want to talk to him. But there's a woman standing next door to the next house, and my friend says, you know, this lady used to live here, you know. Well, she couldn't remember. She doesn't, you know, she probably was younger and didn't live there. But her last name was Drommel. I said, gee, I went to school with a Jenny Drommel. Oh, she says, that is my aunt. She says, she lives just down the street. So anyway, so we walked all the way down to the end of the street. And we knocked on the door, and this woman opens the door, and she says, Hester. Now, I haven't looked since I was 30 years old. That is like 55 years ago. So that was really, for me, very exciting, you know, yeah. And then she told me there was another boy that survived, and I went to see him because we were neighbors. So I met 2 people that knew me when I was like 30 years old. Yeah, so that was very emotional for me. Yeah. Is there anything else that I forgot that I should say?
Did very well.
Huh?
It's always quite a story to hear. Okay. And,
So, I want to say one more thing.
oh, sure.
I forgot that. So, my son, who lives in Victoria, I never really talked about when my kids were young. And they knew that I come from Holland, and but I really never talked about anything like that. But they always had such a feeling there was something there. So in 1995, my son decided he better gets everything under computer. He wants to. So anyway, and I have this booklet that you can hardly read what I wrote in here because it was in a pencil, and it is in Dutch yet. So, well, he wants me to come to Victoria, and my daughter who lives here, the two of us went to Victoria, and we went into a hotel. That's where we were staying. And he came with his laptop, and he wants to write because he is writing this booklet. Anyway, so we're sitting, and so now I had to translate was in there. And I started to cry. Why was I crying? I felt so sorry for the girl who wrote this. Yet the girl was me. So anyway, so my son did a lot of, he got dossiers from Holland and some pictures that I got from my cousin. And so now my kids all know about what happened to me and my family. And I think that is about all that I can think of.
Now our family's getting big.
Yeah.
Yes, right.